So one thing I learned when I did the coilover kit on my Mark V R32 is to buy the strut spreader tool. I did like everyone else and I thought I could just make one, and I struggled with that so much. So these are going to help a lot. I don't have spring compressors. I think on the coilovers you don't need them because you can just spin the coilover down. I know everybody wants the quickest, fastest way to do it, but some people want the actual Bentley manual, so I'm going to scroll down and you can look at it. Here's just the parts list. That tells you what all those parts are, and it'll give you the torque specs. That's the only real important thing that you can get out of these. So here's where the Bentley manual is not going to be much help. For removing the strut, it starts with remove wheel. Notice they skipped the part where you jack the car up, because they assume you know how to do that stuff. Disconnect your brake sensors, wear pad indicators, stuff like that. That's how the struts were connected on the Mark V R32. We're not dealing with that. Alright, so they're both all the way down, and then you let them up. It doesn't go up all the way. So I have the wheel and tire off and a quick look underneath. If your strut is all oily and dirty right here, then that's a good indication that it's bad. Here's your Eibach Racing Springs part number. So this is the original 20-year-old VW factory strut. I've replaced a lot of 20-year-old parts on this car that you wouldn't expect, like the fuel filter. Stuff like this probably should have been changed by now. It looks like we need tie rod ends, probably ball joints too while we're at it, and because we got that one good strut for free, that's why we're doing this. Otherwise, I would agree, it's a complete waste of time to just change one strut. But good practice, and I've never done it on a Mark IV, so. So last night we removed the wheel speed sensor, and I broke the brake caliper bolts loose, so we're going to go ahead and take the brake caliper off, hang that up out of the way, and then we'll remove the sway bar end link, and then start to remove the strut. So I pulled the brake caliper off, and I loosened this screw here, and we put this piece of baling string around it, tighten the screw back up. Now we're just going to loop the string through the brake caliper right here, and we'll be able to tie it up out of the way. So that'll hold that out of the way until a really important moment when my head's like right about here. Then that string is going to slip off the screw, smack me in the head. So the next thing we're going to do is take one of these bolts out of the sway bar end link. So there was a little bit of tension on there when you take that sway bar end link off, so you will need to use a jack to get it back up to get that in. So according to the Bentley manual, the right side is more difficult, and it says disconnect the drive axle from the transmission axle flange. So if our axle is bottoming out on this metal and we can't get the strut out of here, then we'll have to disconnect the axle, but for now we're not going to do that. We're going to remove this bolt here. According to the Bentley manual, you have to replace these bolts every time. When I had my R32, I did that stuff, but we'll be reusing these. Whoa! I almost just died. So I put that strut spreader tool in, and I turned it 90 degrees, and I was trying to look to see how much it spread it, if it was 90 degrees, and it just fell out. This is crazy. When I was working on my R32 coilover kit, this took so long just sitting there beating on it because I didn't have the right tool. Don't try to make one. My best advice for this project is just buy the strut spreader tool. You see how easy that was? So I think our axle's bottomed out, so we're probably going to have to disconnect the axle now. That's what the manual told us to do, but we didn't want to listen. Now we're laying under the bottom of the car. There's the passenger side wheel. So the axle runs up here, and here's where we need to disconnect it. So we're going to disconnect these bolts. We just replaced this oil pan a month or two ago, and it's already got scrapes on it. I am pretty excited because I found this 13mm in the road. It's a gear wrench, flex head ratcheting wrench, and this is the first time I get to use it. So you don't hear the clicks, it's so quiet. This is a pretty good wrench. Jeez, who tightened that? Probably that guy who put the oil pan on. Idiot. So here's the common 4 bits they sell at the auto parts store for the triple square 12 points. I had to cut this one down to fit it in somewhere, and then you can put a wrench on it, and much better. You don't need to have them this long. It's going to be one of the bigger ones, one of these two. We'll leave these 2 small ones out here. Oh, why would it fit? See? See? The bit's too long. Because it's hitting the axle here. We're going to have to cut this one too. Idiots! Why don't they ask me before they make these things? We might be able to get that one in, but I'm not happy about it. So the bit will work in the top without binding, and then I'll just have to check and see if I can rotate the axle. Those are some pretty good looking headers you got there. Don't pay attention to that stuff, nothing to see back there. So once you have all the axle bolts out, that will just sort of flop free there. So I've got the axle disconnected, and I came back to the outside, and in the Bentley manual it says to push on the top of your brake rotor here towards the shock, and that'll help it. And as soon as I did that, it just almost fell off. I had to catch it with my leg before I could get the camera out. Wow, that was so much easier than doing it on the R32. When I did the coilovers on the R32, I tried using chisels, I tried making my own with a torque spit and grinder, and it was such a struggle just sitting there, beating on it, trying to get it down, and this one just fell off. So this is the special socket, the Schwaben 21mm. You put that on there, you put your Allen key in here, and then you can torque your struts properly. And then when you're tightening it, you just switch this over with a torque wrench, get it to your torque specs. Ooh, tight. Ooh, super tight. So start by taking the strap completely out of the ratchet and then run it all the way down through your coil spring. So you wrap the strap around and then you just get like a little tail here. Here's the open end. Pinch these together, put them through your ratchet, and then you can tighten it up. Switch over to the other side. So there you go, that's all you have to do, is get those ratchet straps tight enough. You know, taking them off is going to be a little dangerous, but little washer, that looks a little worn on the top. Little metal guy, set the washer on top of that. And we have just the top of our rubber bellow. Yeah. Bump stop. Probably should have ordered a couple of those. That's completely gone. We've been bumping it a little. You pull your strut right out the bottom. So you can imagine when the car weight's on that, it's pretty much going to be bottomed out the whole time. Yep, that's junk. But this definitely looks like a jagged brake. That's why my car is a 1/4 inch lower on the right side. It's bottoming out the oil pan all the time. Broken springs. So I'm putting it back together, and I've got the non-existent junk bump stop stuffed in there. Then you put your cap, then you put your little washer guy. And to be honest, we do need these, the strut mounts. That's a little mangled up, but we're going to reuse it. Make sure your bearing's in there, and the bearing rides on that here. So I've got the strut hanging there. Make sure to put this little thing back in. Use the new nut. So I have it started. You have to make sure that the tab is going to line up. And we have the jack under it. So now we just jack it up then. So what I'm doing is just jack it up a little, and that'll put tension on it, and then just shake it with one hand and it'll go down here. That's working pretty good. So you need to get this hole on the tab to line up with this hole so you can put the bolt through. And we're pretty much lined up. So we put the bolt through, and we're going to remove our spreader tool now, and then we can tighten the clamp back up because you can still turn it. Leave the jack under it for now. Once you take the strut spreader tool out, you can't twist the strut anymore, so that tightened right up. So the Bentley manual just tells you to do it in the reverse order, but I don't remember what the reverse order was and when I'm supposed to connect the axle. So I think I'm going to try to get under there and do that now. So reconnecting the axle is pretty difficult. You're going to have to use two hands and sort of push up on it with one hand right here, because it'll flex and bend. So I'm tightening the axle bolts, and I'm going to mark each one with a marker, because then you have to get in the car, put it in neutral, and we're going to turn it to get this one over at 10 o'clock so we can do the cross pattern tighten. But then you're going to forget which ones you've done, so you want to mark them. So you could tighten this one first, I guess, or you could tighten up here. I don't know, it doesn't really matter to me. So the new nut that came with my struts is a different size than the old nut, so I can't use the special tool, so we're going to go ahead and reuse the old one. What kind of nonsense is that to give you a different size? And it's going to be the star bit anyways. So we had to make our second trip to the first aid kit, and it's only 10:30. So that's when I got hurt and stopped filming. But what I was trying to do is put a Torx bit in here, because on the factory strut this was the Allen key. So you have to take the Torx bit, put it in there, and then what I was doing wrong is I was using the open end of the wrench to hold it, and then I smashed my knuckles on here and cut my fingers open. So you get the idea. You have to hold the Torx bit with a wrench, and it's really complicated. Tighten everything back up, put your brake caliper back on, put the wheel back on, and we're going to replace all the struts, all the bump stops, all the tie rod ends, ball joints, everything on this car once we get the head gasket leak figured out. So we're not really worried about just changing one strut. And it stopped the clunking on this side, so 3 more corners to go.